The Uluburun Shipwreck. The Bronze Age cargo that rewrote the map proves the ancient world wasn't isolated tribes trading with neighbors. It was a globalized economy 3,300 years ago, older than you were ever taught. The story doesn't begin with archaeologists. It begins with a sponge diver. In the summer of 1982, off the southern coast of Turkey, a man named Mehmet Kakir was working the deep water near a headland called Uluburun. Down at 50 meters, in the cold and the blue dark, he saw shapes resting on the slope. Flat slabs of metal, each with 4 little handles at the corners. He couldn't name them, so when he surfaced, he drew what he'd seen. Metal biscuits with ears. That clumsy little sketch traveled up the chain from boat to museum until it reached someone who understood exactly what those shapes were. Not biscuits, they were oxhide ingots. Copper cast into the shape of a stretched animal hide more than 3,000 years old. And that single drawing had just found the oldest shipwreck the world had ever seen. Nobody was looking for it. It simply waited for the right pair of eyes. Down there, the pressure is crushing and the light is nearly gone. And still the shapes held their edges after more than 3,000 years. To understand why one shipwreck matters this much, picture the Mediterranean in the year 1300 before the Common Era. This is the late Bronze Age. Egypt is ruled by the pharaohs of the New Kingdom. The Hittites hold the highlands of Anatolia. Mycenaean kings raise their palaces in Greece. Cyprus is heavy with copper, and the Canaanite ports of the Levant hum with trade. For a long time, we imagined these worlds as separate, proud, isolated, each keeping to its own shore. The Uluburun ship suggests something else entirely. It was a single vessel, no longer than a modern bus, and yet its hold carried the produce of at least 7 different cultures at once. Egyptian, Canaanite, Cypriot, Mycenaean, Nubian, and lands as far away as the Baltic. Not a raid, not a coincidence. A cargo, assembled on purpose, moving between kingdoms we were told barely knew one another. One boat, and inside it, the whole known world. Trace the routes, and they cross like the strands of a net, each knot a kingdom that could not survive alone. Start with the heaviest thing on board. Copper, 10 tons of it, 354 ingots, each cast in that oxhide shape, with 4 handles so a person could haul one across a shoulder. 10 tons is the weight of 2 full-grown elephants resting on the timbers of a wooden ship. And the copper was not local. Lead isotope analysis, which reads the chemical fingerprint locked inside the metal, points strongly to a single source, the island of Cyprus. Somewhere on that island, ore was cut from the rock, poured molten into molds, and carried down to a waiting harbor. Then it crossed open sea. When you picture one of these ingots, you are holding the far end of a supply chain that ran across hundreds of miles of water. Every ingot was money and armor and tools waiting to be born. And copper on its own was only half of a recipe. Archaeologists counted them where they lay, still stacked in 4 neat rows across the width of the hull, exactly as the crew had loaded them. Because copper alone is soft. To make bronze, the metal that named the whole age, the metal of swords and armor and tools, you need tin. And tin is the problem. Tin is rare. In the entire ancient Mediterranean, there was almost none of it to be found. The Uluburun ship carried about 1 ton, stored in ingots stacked beside the copper. And here is the ratio that matters. Roughly 10 parts copper to 1 part tin. Exactly the proportion you need to make bronze. This ship was not carrying random loot, it was carrying a formula. The tin most likely came overland from sources far to the east. Anatolia, perhaps Central Asia, thousands of miles from where the ship finally went down. Sit with that for a moment. To arm a single Bronze Age kingdom, metal had to travel from opposite ends of the known world and meet in the belly of one small boat. The people who ran these routes understood something we sometimes forget. Distance was not a wall. Distance was simply the price of the metal. Now move past the metal, deeper into the hold. There were about 175 ingots of raw glass, discs of deep cobalt blue, turquoise, and pale lavender. This is some of the earliest worked glass ever found in bulk, colored with recipes known in Egypt and the Levant. There were tall Canaanite jars, more than 100 of them, and many still held a golden resin from the terebinth tree. Burned as incense, blended into perfume, perhaps stirred into wine. There was ivory from elephant tusks and hippopotamus teeth, dark African blackwood, ostrich eggshells cut to be worked into vessels, gold and silver jewelry, figs, olives, grapes, and pomegranates still traceable after 3,000 years in the dark. Every layer you peel back is another country. The ship is less a boat than a floating market, and each object is a thread reaching back to a different pair of distant hands. Analysis of the jars matched some of them to the northern Levant, so even the pottery, plain and unremarkable, remembers where it was made. And then, among the personal things, the excavators found something that stops you cold. A small golden scarab carved with the name of an Egyptian queen, Nefertiti, one of the only objects of its kind ever discovered. So whose ship was this? And where was it going? Nobody knows for certain, and historians still debate it to this day. Some believe it was a royal shipment, gifts and raw wealth moving between courts, the kind of exchange described in the Amarna letters, where kings addressed one another as brothers. Others think it was a grand private venture. What we can say is this: the ship was sailing counterclockwise, west and north, the direction that carried Levantine cargo towards Cyprus and the Aegean. It left a harbor fully loaded. It never arrived, and every guess about its destination reopens the same quiet question. Who built a world this connected and then somehow lost it? Whatever the truth, someone trusted this single hull with the wealth of a kingdom, and the sea took it anyway. Consider the ship itself, because it is a marvel apart from the cargo. It was built of Lebanese cedar, the same prized wood the pharaohs imported for their temples and their sacred boats. Its planks were joined with pegged mortise and tenon joints, a technique so strong the shipwrights of Rome would still use it 1,000 years later. It measured around 15 meters, and it carried a proto-keel, an early ancestor of the backbone that would one day let ships cross whole oceans. Almost all of the wooden hull is gone now, slowly eaten away by the sea, but enough survived, sheltered beneath the heavy cargo, to make this the oldest sea-going ship ever excavated. When it was whole, it moved under a single square sail. Its deck crowded with stone anchors, clay lamps, and the smell of resin and salt. A working ship, carrying a fortune, trusting the weather to be kind. Even broken and worm-eaten, those cedar planks pushed the whole timeline of shipbuilding further back than anyone had expected. Among the finds was something quiet that changes how we picture these sailors. A wooden writing tablet, 2 small leaves of boxwood hinged together, their inner faces hollowed to hold a thin layer of wax. You would scratch words into the wax, then smooth it flat and begin again. It is the oldest known book of this kind in the world, a distant grandparent of every notebook and every hinged page that came after it. The wax is long dissolved, so we will never read what was written there. Perhaps a manifest of the cargo, perhaps a message between kings, perhaps only a careful tally of copper and tin. That silence is its own kind of story. The ship was carrying not just goods, but writing, accounting, the quiet machinery of long-distance trade. These were not people bartering trinkets on a beach. They were running an economy, and they kept their records. Balance weights turned up too, a full set of them. The small stones a merchant used to weigh gold and silver fairly. Fair trade, 3,000 years ago, carried in a pouch. Recovering all of this was not a single dramatic dive. It took 11 years. From 1984 to 1994, the archaeologists George Bass and Semal Pulak returned season after season to the same rocky slope, 44 to 61 meters down. 11 campaigns, more than 22,000 individual dives. At that depth, a diver can only work for a few short minutes before the sea forces them back toward the surface. So every object was mapped exactly where it lay, measured, photographed, and only then lifted, one careful piece after another, into tanks of fresh water to draw out the salt. Nearly 17 tons of material raised by hand out of the dark. There was no grand expedition sent to find a legend here. A sponge diver saw metal with ears, sketched it, and an entire lost world came up the line behind that drawing. Slowly, patiently, over more than a decade, Tufan Turanli built a computerized mapping system so the exact position of every find could be recorded before it was moved. Nothing was allowed to lose its place in the story. So what does one sunken ship actually prove? This is the heart of it. No single kingdom in the Bronze Age could make bronze on its own. Copper from Cyprus, tin from somewhere far to the east, glass from Egypt, resin from the Levant, ivory from Africa, amber carried from the distant shores of the Baltic. To arm your soldiers and furnish your palace, you needed all of them, which means you needed everyone else. The evidence suggests an economy that was genuinely interdependent, stitched together across thousands of miles of sea and land. Kingdoms that fought each other still traded with each other because none of them could truly stand alone. The uluburun ship did not just carry treasure, it carried proof. Proof that the ancient world was a web, and every strand of that web ran straight through the hold of a single wooden hull. The uluburun ship carried goods from Egypt, Canaan, Cyprus, Mycenaean Greece, Nubia, the Near East, and the far Baltic, all together, all at once, in a single hold. And here is the quiet, heavy part of it. Within roughly a century of this ship going down, that entire world came apart. Historians call it the Late Bronze Age collapse. One by one, across a single long lifetime, the great powers faltered. Mycenaean palaces were abandoned. The Hittite Empire dissolved into silence. Cities along the eastern Mediterranean emptied and fell still. The exact causes are still debated. Drought, earthquakes, movements of peoples, the breaking of these very trade routes. Most likely all of them tangled together at once. The web that the uluburun ship depended on simply unraveled. The connections that made a globalized Bronze Age possible were also, it seems, what made it fragile. When the threads snapped, the whole tapestry went with them. The ship on the seabed had no way of knowing it was already a relic of a world about to end. A message in a bottle, sealed by accident, addressed to us. The listener can rest here if the eyes are heavy. The story does not need you to hold on. It has held on by itself for 33 centuries. For 3,300 years, it lay in total darkness on that slope, untouched, uncounted, waiting. A time capsule that no one had ever meant to bury. And when it finally came up, it did something no temple and no royal text had managed. It redrew the map. We stopped picturing isolated tribes trading nervously with their neighbors and started seeing what had really been there all along. A connected world, older than we were ever taught. The oldest map of the world was a sunken ship, not carved in stone, not written by a king, just stacked in the hold of a merchant vessel that never made port. Copper and tin and glass and amber laid side by side, quietly insisting that everyone was already connected. Everything we thought we knew about the beginning had to make room for one small boat. A boat that sank on an ordinary voyage and kept the truth safe in the dark. No single scribe could have drawn a picture this wide. It took a shipwreck to do it, and it took the sea to keep it. So the next time the ancient world sounds small and far away and simple, remember the slope of uluburun. Remember the biscuits with ears. Down there, in the cold and the blue dark, the cargo is still teaching. One boat held the whole map, and it kept it, patiently, in the dark. Not a shout, not a warning. Just a slow, patient light on the metal, still there, still waiting.